This is a message from a viewer named Cal, and by the time you finish hearing what happened to him on a Saturday morning in Cebu City, you may want to check exactly whose name is on your bank accounts. Because a 64-year-old commercial real estate appraiser from Reno, Nevada, woke up before sunrise to the smell of smoke coming from his own front courtyard. And what he saw when he walked outside changed the arithmetic of the rest of his life in a way he had 11 minutes to respond to. He didn't scream. He didn't argue. He didn't try to save the shoes. He went back inside, packed a rolling suitcase, and started making phone calls that would eventually cost his wife more than she ever imagined a foreigner in her country could take from her, but only because of 3 things he had done years earlier without knowing why he was doing them. My name is Cal Whitmore Carlin, and I want to tell you what happens when your marriage burns in a metal bucket in front of you, and you have exactly 1 weekend to figure out whether the rest of your American life is going to survive it. If you've been enjoying the stories I tell, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. I want to start with the version of me that existed before any of this happened, because you need to understand what kind of man walked into the Cebu situation. And it wasn't the kind of man who walks in expecting to walk out again. I spent 27 years as a commercial real estate appraiser in Reno, Nevada. If you don't know what that job is, it's the person who tells the bank what a shopping center is really worth before they lend money against it. It's a job for people who like documentation. It's a job for people who take photographs of parking lots and file them by date. It's a job for people who never throw a receipt away because they've seen what happens when someone in a courtroom asks for one and you don't have it. That was me for almost 3 decades, and by the time I retired at 59, I had ended my career as a senior certified general appraiser, which is the top of that particular ladder, and I had a small pension from the Nevada Public Employees Retirement System. Because I'd done a 2-year stint as a county assessor in my 40s, it wasn't much. $620 a month, but it was mine. I'd been divorced for 11 years by the time I left the country. My ex-wife, Donna, had remarried a contractor in Sparks. We were on civil terms. I had 2 adult children I loved. Tyler was a construction project manager in Sacramento, 38 years old, close to me in the way sons are close to their fathers when they've had to become the practical one in the family. Megan was 35, managing a dental office in Henderson, more cautious than her brother, quieter about her opinions. Always the one who watched a situation for a long time before she said anything about it. Between the 2 of them and their kids, I had a life that on paper looked fine, but in practice looked like a lot of solo dinners at the same 3 restaurants and a lot of driving to Sacramento on holidays to be a grandfather for a weekend before driving back to a condo where nobody had moved anything since the last time I'd been in it. I sold that condo in the Midtown neighborhood of Reno for $248,000 net, and I moved to Cebu City in the Philippines at the age of 60. I want to be honest about why. It wasn't a woman, not yet. It was that I had spent my whole life measuring the value of other people's buildings, and I had gotten to 60 and realized nobody was going to measure the value of mine. I wanted to live somewhere warm. I wanted to live somewhere cheaper. I wanted to live somewhere where I wasn't the loneliest guy at Applebee's on a Tuesday night. I moved to Cebu because a friend from the appraisal industry had done it 4 years earlier and hadn't come back, and when I asked him why, he said, "Because life is here now." And I understood what he meant, even though I couldn't have explained it in words. Remy came a few months after I arrived. Her full name is Remedios Escarlin, and she was 40 years old the day I met her, working as a part-time cashier at the Robinson's Mall branch closest to the Labanjan district of Cebu City, which turned out to be her neighborhood, the place she had grown up, 3 blocks from the condominium I would eventually rent with her. She had been through an Article 36 annulment from her first Filipino husband 4 years before I met her, and she was upfront about it in a way that I appreciated. No children. A mother in her late 60s named Nene Coring, who had run a small sari-sari store until her knees gave out. One brother named Nestor, 45 years old, who worked as a barangay tanod, which is a kind of neighborhood watch officer with a uniform and a limited authority. 2 sisters who lived in other parts of Cebu and who I would meet only a handful of times over the 4 years I was married to their sister. Remy was not a scammer. I want to be very clear about that at the beginning because the story I am about to tell you doesn't fit the pattern most of you are expecting. She didn't target me. She didn't run a script. She wasn't part of a syndicate. She was a real woman with a real family. And for the first 2 years of our marriage, we were happy in a way I hadn't been in maybe 15 years. She cooked. I read. We went to the beach in Bantayan on long weekends. She taught me how to bargain in the wet market. I taught her how to use a spreadsheet because she had never seen anyone actually use one, and she thought it was miraculous the way the numbers added themselves up. We laughed. We ate together every night. I was 61 years old, and I felt like I had been given a second draft of my life. The trouble started in year 3, and it started the way trouble usually starts, which is not with a bang but with a small request. Nene Coring needed a new roof. The old one was leaking during typhoon season, and she was going to end up with mold in her 1-bedroom house if we didn't do something about it. 85,000 pesos. About $1,500. Remy asked me over dinner if we could help. I said yes. Of course. She was my mother-in-law. That's what family does. I transferred the money the next morning, and Nene Coring came over to our condo the following weekend with a bag of mangoes and a smile, and she said thank you in Cebuano through Remy, and I felt like a good man. A few months later, Nestor needed money for a habal, which is a motorcycle taxi. 32,000 pesos. About $580. He had lost his previous one in an accident and needed to get back to earning. I paid. Then a cousin of Remy's needed medical assistance for something I never really understood the details of. 44,000 pesos. About $800. I paid that too. Over the 4 years of our marriage, if you added up every request from the Eskerlin family that came through Remy, the total was somewhere around 580,000 pesos. $10,400. It was not ruinous. I had far more than that in my American accounts. But I did keep track. I kept track in a notes app on my phone, not because I was building a case, but because I keep track of everything. That's what appraisers do. That habit turned out to matter. The night everything shifted was a Wednesday in what I'll call the 4th year. Though I don't want to name the year because the year isn't the point. Remy came home from the mall and told me her mother had found a piece of land in Labangon, 1 block from her current house, that was for sale. 200,000 pesos. About $21,500. Nene Coring wanted to buy it and build a small compound where Remy and I and Nestor and his family could all eventually live. It was a beautiful vision, Remy said. It was the family together. It was security for the older generation. It was a legacy. I said no. I said no for 3 reasons, and I said them plainly and calmly the way I would have said them in a client meeting. First, foreigners cannot legally own land in the Philippines. It is written into the Constitution. If I bought that land, I would be buying it in Remy's name or her mother's name, and I would have no legal claim to it if the marriage ever ended. Second, my professional instincts as an appraiser had already made me suspicious of the title on that particular parcel. I had asked to see the mother title a few weeks earlier when Remy first mentioned it, and there were irregularities in the chain of ownership that would have gotten a red flag from any American title company. And third, buying it would require liquidating most of the joint peso account we kept at Metrobank for household expenses, and I was not comfortable leaving us without that reserve during a period when neither of us was earning much. Remy listened. She didn't argue. She said okay. She kissed me on the forehead and went to take a shower. Then she called her mother. I don't know exactly what Nene Coring said to her that night, but I know it was long, and I know it was loud, because I could hear Remy's voice through the bedroom door for almost 2 hours. When she came out, her eyes were red, and she wouldn't look at me. She went to the couch and slept there. That was the first time she had ever done that. The 6 weeks between that phone call and the Saturday morning fire were the worst 6 weeks of the marriage. Remy stopped cooking. She stopped talking to me at meals. She started spending long evenings at her mother's house and coming home after I was asleep. When I tried to talk about it, she said I didn't understand her culture and that in the Philippines, a man who could afford to help his wife's family and chose not to was worse than a poor man. I told her that I did understand her culture, that I had paid for a roof and a motorcycle and a cousin's surgery, and that saying no to one thing didn't erase saying yes to 15 other things. She said her mother thought I was cheap. She said her brother thought I was disrespectful. She said everyone in the family was talking about me. I want to tell you what I felt during those 6 weeks, because it matters for understanding what happened next. I did not feel scammed. I did not feel like I was being manipulated by a professional. I felt like I was watching my wife slowly disappear behind a wall of family pressure that I was not equipped to push back against. And I felt lonely in my own home in a way I hadn't felt since Reno. And I kept thinking that if I just stayed calm and reasonable, we would get through it. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about a lot of things during those 6 weeks, but I was not wrong to say no about the land. And that has been the strange and difficult knowledge I've had to live with since. Saying no was the right decision. It just happened to be the decision that ended the marriage. I want to jump ahead now to the Saturday morning, because everything before it was slow and everything after it was fast. And the fast part is what I need you to understand. It was 6:17 in the morning when I woke up to the smell of something burning. Not food, not incense, cloth, and plastic, and the faintly chemical smell of the rubber sole of a running shoe when it catches. I got out of bed and put on shorts and walked barefoot out to the small courtyard at the front of our building, the one that had the metal gate and the 2 potted plants Remy had always meant to water. And I saw a galvanized bucket in the middle of the concrete, and I saw flames coming out of it. 3 of my shirts were in that bucket, my running shoes, my diploma from Idaho State University, framed, glass and all. A hardcover photo album of camping trips I had taken with Tyler when he was between the ages of 8 and 15. Every physical object in my possession that had sentimental rather than practical value was in that bucket, and it was on fire. Remy stood next to the bucket. She was wearing her house dress. She was not crying. She was watching. Nestor, my brother-in-law, stood about 15 feet away with his tanned uniform on, arms crossed, watching me, not stopping her, not stopping the fire, just watching. Later, I would find out that Nene Coring had arrived at the building at 5:58 in the morning, 19 minutes before the fire started, and had left before I woke up. The CCTV showed her walking in with a plastic bag. I stood in the courtyard for maybe 10 seconds. I looked at the bucket. I looked at Remy. She looked at me and she said in English very clearly, "Go home, Cal. This is our country." I want to tell you what I felt in that moment, because I don't want to lie to you and pretend I felt clear-headed. I felt like the floor was tilting. I felt like there was a ringing in my ears. I felt something in my chest that I later learned from my American doctor was probably the beginning of an atrial fibrillation episode that would come and go for months afterward, but I did not say anything. I did not scream. I did not try to reach into the bucket. I turned around and walked back into the apartment. I want to tell you what I did in the next 11 minutes, because I timed it. And I timed it not because I was clever, but because I am an appraiser, and appraisers time everything. I went to the bedroom. I opened the wardrobe. I took out my rolling suitcase and my backpack. I put my passport into the backpack first, because that was the one thing I could not replace easily in the Philippines. I put in my laptop. I put in my external hard drive. I put in the folder of physical documents I kept in a fireproof lockbox under the bed, which contained my marriage certificate, my Nevada driver's license, my Social Security card, my Medicare card, and the printout of the Fidelity IRA rollover confirmation from 3 years earlier. I put in a change of clothes for 2 days. I put in my medications. I put in my phone charger. I took Remy's phone off the nightstand where it had been left face up and unlocked because she had been using it in bed the night before, and I took 11 screenshots of her WhatsApp conversation with her brother from the previous night, the one where he confirmed the time Nene Coring was going to arrive with the bucket and the lighter fluid. I put her phone back on the nightstand exactly where it had been. I picked up my bags. I walked back out through the courtyard, past the still-burning bucket, past Remy, past Nestor, and out onto the street. It was 6:31 in the morning. I walked to the nearest 7-Eleven. There was one on the corner of the next block. I bought a coffee and sat down at the plastic table near the window, and I opened my phone. Tyler's number was the first one I called. It was 6:45 in the morning in Cebu, which meant it was 2:45 in the afternoon on a Friday in Sacramento. He picked up on the second ring. I told him what had happened. I told him in the flat voice of a man who had not yet processed what had happened, which is the voice you use when you are describing the site conditions of a warehouse fire. And I got through the whole thing in about 4 minutes. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Then he asked me 2 questions, and I want you to remember these 2 questions, because they are the reason I am telling you this story at all. The first question was, are your U.S. accounts okay? The second question was, do you have a lawyer there? I said yes to the first and no to the second. Tyler said, then your first call this morning is finding a lawyer. Not me, not your mother, a lawyer. Call me back after you've done that. He hung up. He was right to hang up. I want to say that in front of you because a lot of men in this situation want their family to sit on the phone with them and comfort them. And Tyler knew that if he stayed on the phone with me for the next 2 hours, I would spend those 2 hours crying and not finding a lawyer. And by Monday morning, I would be in a much worse position than I was that Saturday morning at 6:45. He hung up because he loved me. That is what love from your adult children looks like when the house is on fire. I opened the Cebu Expat Facebook group on my phone. I had been a passive member of that group for 3 years. I almost never posted. I had scrolled through it during lunch breaks and forgotten it existed the rest of the time. I typed a message that I still remember word for word. I wrote, need referral to Cebu family law attorney. Today, if possible, this is not casual. Can pay consultation fee right now. I posted it at 7:15 in the morning. By 7:35, I had 4 responses. 3 of them recommended the same attorney. Her name was Leonora Cachapero Dalase. She had an office in the Mabalo district. One of the responders said she had handled a divorce for his neighbor and had been available on a weekend. Another said she was 52 years old, had been practicing family law and property law in Cebu for over 20 years, and did not tolerate wasted time. I called her at 8:30. I expected voicemail. She answered on the 4th ring. I told her the situation in about 90 seconds. I did not embellish. I did not editorialize. I gave her the facts the way I would have given a client the condition report on a strip mall. When I was done, she was quiet for perhaps 3 seconds. Then she said, do not touch the joint account. Do not return to the condo today. Text me the account number, the bank, and your MetroBank app login credentials. I will tell you what to do with each. How did you find me? I told her the Facebook group. She said, good. That group is mostly reliable. Then she said something that I want you to hear, because it was the most important thing anyone said to me that entire weekend. She said, in the next hour, I am going to send you a 3-item list. Do only what is on that list. Do not do anything else. Do not call your wife. Do not go back to the apartment. Do not make any financial decision without asking me first. Come to my office Monday at 9 in the morning. Bring everything I put on the second list. Are we clear? I said yes. The 3-item list arrived by text at 9 o'clock in the morning. It said, 1. Go to a hotel, any hotel within walking distance. Check in under your own passport. 2. Do not communicate with your wife by phone, text, or social media until I tell you to. 3. Come to my office Monday at 9. Bring every document on the attached list. The attached list had 11 items on it. Every bank statement I had from every account in the Philippines and the United States for the last 4 years. Every receipt for every payment I had ever made to any member of my wife's family. My marriage certificate. My condominium lease agreement. My passport. My Philippine visa documentation. Any photographs or WhatsApp screenshots that were relevant to the dispute. My retirement account statements. My Social Security award letter. My Nevada PERS pension statement. A written narrative of the events of that morning, dated, signed, and as detailed as I could make it. I checked into a hotel in the IT Park area of Cebu at 9:45. It was 3 kilometers from Labangon, far enough away, close enough that I could walk to the attorney's office on Monday if I needed to. I took my 2 bags to the room and I sat down on the bed, and I did not move for about 20 minutes. I want to tell you honestly what I was thinking during those 20 minutes. Because it was not what you might expect. I was not thinking about Remy. I was not thinking about the fire. I was thinking about the fact that my passport was in my bag. I was thinking about the fact that my Fidelity IRA, which was worth $312,000, was in a custodian's office in Boston, and that no court order in the Philippines could reach it. I was thinking about the fact that my emergency reserve at U.S. Bank, $41,000, was sitting in Reno, in an account with only my name on it. I was thinking that the taxable brokerage account I had at Fidelity, which had another $18,000 in it, was also in my name only. And I was thinking that the condominium I had been living in for 4 years was a rental, not a purchase, and that the lease was in my name and my name only. I want to tell you something very important about that inventory. None of it was strategic. I had not planned any of it. I had kept the IRA in the United States because it would have been complicated to move it, and I had never gotten around to figuring out how. I had kept the emergency reserve at U.S. Bank, because that was where I had been banking for 30 years and it felt normal. I had never added Remy to any of my American accounts because I had never gotten around to filling out the forms. I had rented the condo instead of buying because I kept telling myself we would eventually buy something bigger, and we never did. Every single one of those decisions had been made out of inertia, procrastination, and low-grade laziness. And every single one of them was about to save the rest of my American life. The only mistake I had made was the joint Metro Bank account. It had 840,000 pesos in it, about $15,000. I had opened it in the first year of the marriage because it made household bills easier to pay. Remy was on it as a joint account holder with full withdrawal authority. She could have gone to any Metro Bank branch that morning, presented her ID, and cleaned it out. That she had not yet done so was the only piece of good luck I had left. I called Tyler back at 11 o'clock in the morning. I told him I was in a hotel. I told him I had an attorney. Tyler said, "Good. Now stop talking to me and start working on the document list." He hung up again. He was right again. I spent the rest of that Saturday and all of Sunday doing exactly what he said. I went to the hotel business center and I printed. I printed for 6 hours on Saturday and 8 hours on Sunday. I had a Dropbox account that Remy had never had access to, which contained the last 4 years of my life in digital form, bank statements, wire transfer receipts, copies of every WhatsApp message I had ever exchanged with a member of the Eskerlin family that had a financial dimension, photographs I had taken of receipts, screenshots of Facebook Messenger conversations, the Notes app tally of every peso I had ever sent to the family, with dates and reasons. I had this archive because I am an appraiser and I document everything. I did not have it because I was building a case against my wife. I had it because that is what my nervous system does with information. It stores it. It sorts it. It puts it in folders by date. By Sunday night, I had a printed stack of documents that was about 4 inches thick. Tyler texted me from Sacramento. "How many pages?" I texted back, "A lot." He texted, "Good." Monday morning at 9 o'clock, I walked into the office of Leonora Cachapero Dallasay. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She sat me down at a conference table and she looked at my stack of documents for about 40 seconds without saying anything. Then she said, "You are the most organized foreigner I have ever had in this office. This is going to make my job much easier." Then she laid out what she was going to do. She was going to file 3 legal instruments simultaneously that afternoon. The first was a petition for legal separation under the Family Code of the Philippines, on the grounds of physical and psychological violence covered under Republic Act 9262, the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act, which despite its name does provide grounds for a spouse of either sex when the violence includes economic coercion and destruction of property. The burning of my belongings, documented on the building's CCTV, was the physical violence. The 4-year pattern of family financial demands, documented in my Dropbox archive, was the economic coercion. Together, they made a case. The second instrument was a petition for separation of property, filed concurrently, seeking formal dissolution of the conjugal property regime that automatically applied to our marriage under Philippine law, and seeking an equal division of any identifiable conjugal assets. In our case, that meant the joint Metro Bank account, That was the only thing that legally belonged to both of us. The third instrument, and the most urgent, was an emergency application to the regional trial court for a temporary restraining order on that joint Metro Bank account. She explained that this was not a standard motion. She would have to demonstrate imminent harm, and she would have to do it fast. The evidence of imminent harm was the burning, the arrival of Nene Coring at the building 19 minutes before the fire started, the WhatsApp screenshots I had taken from Remy's phone showing the coordination between her and her brother, and my written narrative dated and signed the previous day. If the court accepted the application, the account would be frozen. Neither of us would be able to withdraw a single peso until the legal separation proceedings resolved. The TRO was granted 3 days later. Remy's attorney filed an opposition. The opposition was rejected at the initial hearing on the strength of the CCTV footage from the building's security system, which showed Nene Coring arriving at 5:58 in the morning with the plastic bag, and which undermined Remy's initial claim that the burning had been a spontaneous emotional act on her part. The account stayed frozen. I want to tell you about the 8 months that followed, but I want to tell you about them briefly, because the day-by-day of a Philippine family court proceeding is not what you need to hear. What you need to hear is that during those 8 months, Remy's attorney filed a counter-complaint against me under the same Republic Act, 9262, alleging that my refusal to fund the Labangan land purchase constituted economic abuse of my wife. Leonora had anticipated this. She had told me the day I met her that Remy would file a counter-complaint, because in her experience, the spouse who had been caught doing something documentable almost always filed a counter-complaint. She had told me not to be alarmed by it. She had told me to trust the documentation. She was right. The counter-complaint was reviewed by the prosecution office, and in the 4th month of the proceedings, the prosecution office declined to file an information against me. That meant the counter-complaint never became a criminal case. It was, in the practical language of Philippine legal procedure, dismissed. Leonora also advised me, and I want to be clear about this, that I could have filed my own criminal VAWC complaint against Remy for the burning and for the pattern of financial coercion. She advised me not to. She said that a criminal case would take significantly longer than the legal separation would, that it would generate exactly the kind of counter-litigation that would extend everything by 2 or 3 more years, and that it would not change the outcome of the property division. She said, "You want to leave this marriage. You do not want to spend the next 3 years of your life litigating it. Take the separation. Take the property. Leave." I took her advice. In the 8th month, the regional trial court granted the legal separation. The conjugal property regime was formally dissolved. The joint Metro Bank account was divided 50-50. I received 420,000 pesos. Remy received 420,000 pesos. The Cebu condominium, whose lease was in my name, reverted to my exclusive possession, and Remy was ordered to vacate within 30 days with her personal belongings, which she did without further incident. The counter VAWC complaint against me, having been declined by the prosecution office, was formally closed. My American assets were never touched. They were never at risk. They were never subject to any order of any Philippine court, because they were outside the jurisdiction of Philippine family law, held in institutions that would only respond to a court order issued in a jurisdiction they recognized, and no such order was ever sought or obtainable. The total cost of the marriage's ending was, when I sat down and added it all up, 580,000 pesos in family contributions over 4 years, none of which was recoverable, because those had been gifts and not loans, and I had no promissory notes. 420,000 pesos, which was my half of the joint account that had been split by the court, and about $9,200 in legal fees paid to Leonora for the retainer and the 8 months of proceedings. In American dollars, the total damage was around $22,700. I want to sit with that number for a moment because I want you to understand what it could have been. If I had transferred the bulk of my Fidelity IRA to a Philippine bank account during the marriage, which many foreign husbands do because it feels convenient, that money would have been conjugal property, and half of it would have gone to Remy. Half of $312,000 is $156,000. If I had bought a Philippine condominium unit during the marriage, which foreigners can legally do under the 40% rule, that unit would have been conjugal property, and half of whatever it was worth would have gone to Remy. If I had added Remy to my American bank accounts, which people do all the time out of a sense that it's what married couples do, portions of those accounts could have become entangled in claims that would have taken years to unwind. If I had not kept the Dropbox archive of receipts and WhatsApp messages, Leonora would not have had the evidentiary foundation to file the TRO, or to defeat the counter-vog complaint, or to establish the pattern of economic coercion that supported the grounds for legal separation. The difference between $22,700 and $175,000 was made up of three things I had done without knowing I was doing them. I had kept the IRA in the United States because I had never gotten around to moving it. I had rented instead of bought because I had never gotten around to purchasing. I had archived the WhatsApp messages and receipts because I am an appraiser, and I archive everything. Every one of those three habits was luck. Every one of them was the result of low-grade procrastination rather than high-level strategy. And every one of them was the difference between me sitting in a hotel room in Cebu with a plan on a Sunday night and me sitting in a bus station in Manila with nothing. The other thing I want you to understand about that number is what saved me during the crisis itself, as opposed to what saved me before it. What saved me during the crisis was three people. Tyler, who at 2:45 on a Friday afternoon in Sacramento asked me the right two questions in the right order and then hung up because he loved me. Leonora Cachapero Dallasay, who answered her phone on a Saturday morning and sent me a 3-item instruction list within 20 minutes. And the 3 anonymous members of the Cebu expat Facebook group who took the time to write me the same attorney's name on a Saturday morning when they had no reason to and no obligation to. None of those 3 people had I planned for. None of them was part of any strategy I had put in place. All of them were, again, luck, or something adjacent to luck, which is the result of years of small, passive investments in relationships and communities that only pay off when the fire starts. I moved back to Reno 4 months after the legal separation was finalized. I did not want to stay in Cebu, and Leonora had told me it was better for me not to be in the Philippines when I filed the associated paperwork with the American IRS to declare the change in my marital status. My condominium in Midtown had been sold years earlier, so I rented a small apartment on the north side of town, near a park, and I bought a used car, and I signed up at the YMCA, and I started, at the age of 64, to figure out what the rest of my life was going to look like. Tyler came out from Sacramento for a weekend the first month I was back. He brought his kids. We went to the park. He did not ask me any questions about what had happened. He did not want to make me relive it. He waited until we were sitting on the porch on the Sunday evening before he left, and he said, "Dad, I want to say one thing, and then I'm going to leave it alone forever. I'm proud of you." He hugged me, and he drove back to Sacramento, and I sat on the porch for another 2 hours after he had gone. And I thought about what my life would have looked like if my son had not asked me the right 2 questions on a Friday afternoon 8 months earlier. Megan came to visit me the following month from Henderson. Megan is the cautious one, the one who watches for a long time before she speaks. She sat with me at my kitchen table and drank 2 cups of coffee before she said what she had come to say. She said, "Dad, I was worried about you the entire time you were over there. I never said anything because I didn't want to be the daughter who said I told you so. But I want you to know that when Tyler called me from Sacramento that Saturday afternoon and told me what had happened, I was not surprised. I was relieved that you got out with what you got out with. And I want you to promise me one thing. If you ever move overseas again, you talk to me about it first. Not Tyler, me, because I am the one who will tell you the truth about what you are doing." I promised her. I want to close by telling you what I have learned. Because if this story is going to be worth anything to anyone, it has to be worth something in the form of specific things that can be done or not done. I have thought about this for a long time now. I have talked to Leonora about it. I have talked to Tyler and Megan about it. I have thought about it during my walks around the park in Reno. I want to give you 3 things. The first is about who you call when the crisis starts. When your wife burns your shirts in a bucket in the front courtyard. or when whatever the equivalent is in your own particular life happens, the person you call first is not the person you love most. It is the person who loves you most and who is far enough away from the situation to think clearly about it. For me, that was Tyler. For you, it may be a sibling or an adult child or an old friend from before you moved overseas. It is not your wife's family. It is not the woman herself. It is the person who is going to ask you the right two questions and then hang up because they love you. Those two questions are always the same. Are your assets outside the country you are currently in safe? And do you have an attorney in the country you are currently in? If the answer to either question is no, you have work to do before the sun sets. The second is about the structures. Please listen carefully. Every single one of the things that saved me was passive. Every single one of them was inertia rather than strategy. But you should not count on your own inertia to save you the way mine saved me. You should look at every structure in your life right now and you should ask yourself, if the fire started tomorrow morning, would this structure hold? Is your retirement account in your own name and outside the country you are living in? Is your emergency reserve in your own name and outside the country you are living in? Is your primary residence in your own name, or is it rented, or is it owned in a way that would give a hostile spouse an easy claim on half of it? Do you have a joint bank account with your spouse in the country you are living in that contains more money than you can afford to lose 50% of in a single court order? If any of these answers make you uncomfortable, you have a weekend of work to do, and you should do it before the smell of smoke wakes you up at 6:17 in the morning. The third is about the joint account. It is the one thing I did wrong, and it is the one thing you can fix this week without a lawyer, without a strategy, and without any conversation you would find humiliating to have. You do not need a joint account with your spouse to run a household in the Philippines or anywhere else. You need your own account. She needs her own account. You transfer money to her account monthly for the agreed household expenses. That is it. There is no scenario in which a joint account holds up better during a marital crisis than two separate accounts with a documented transfer pattern between them. None. If I had run our finances that way for the 4 years of my marriage, the $15,000 that ended up in Remy's half of the split would still be in my account today. The reason I did not run our finances that way was that a joint account felt more romantic, more trusting, more like what a married couple does. Comfort is not a criterion for financial architecture. Comfort is a criterion for choosing a pillow. Please do not confuse the two. I want to tell you one last thing before I stop. I do not hate Remy. I want to say that in front of you because I have listened to a lot of stories from men in situations like mine, and a lot of them are told with a lot of hatred, and I understand where the hatred comes from. But it is not what happened to me. Remy was a real woman with a real family and a real set of pressures that she was not able to push back against. And she did something to me on a Saturday morning in her country that I do not think she would have done to me if her mother had not stood behind her the whole way. I have thought about this many times. I have thought about whether that makes what she did better or worse. I have not reached a conclusion. What I know is that she is not a monster, and I am not a saint. And the marriage failed in ways that had as much to do with what I did not push back on in years 1, 2, and 3 as it had to do with what she did on a Saturday morning in year 4. What saved me was not that I was smart. What saved me was that when the fire started, 3 people around me acted correctly within a few hours of the fire starting. Tyler asked the 2 questions. Leonora sent the 3-item list. The Facebook group answered the request. That was the whole margin. That was the entire difference between the man I am now, sitting in an apartment in Reno with my American life mostly intact, and the man I would have been if any one of those 3 people had failed to act correctly. Please do not plan for that kind of luck. Please plan for the structures that make the luck unnecessary. Please talk to your children before the fire, not during it. Please keep your important accounts in your own name and outside the country you are living in. Please do not open a joint account for the sake of feeling romantic. Please keep the receipts even if you never think you will need them. And please back them up somewhere your spouse cannot access, not because you distrust your spouse, but because a copy of a bank statement takes almost no space in the cloud and can save you $150,000 if the day ever comes. I want to tell you about the 6 months after I got back to Reno, because I think this is the part of the story that doesn't get told in videos like this one, and I think it matters. The legal proceedings ended. The apartment got rented. The paperwork got filed. And then I had to figure out how to be a 64-year-old divorced man in a city I had left when I was 59. And I want to be honest, that this was harder than any of the mechanical parts of the 8 months in Cebu. In Cebu, I had a task. I had a document list. I had a Monday morning appointment. I had Leonora telling me what to do next. In Reno, I had nothing to do next. Nobody was waiting for me at 9 o'clock in the morning. Nobody needed my Dropbox archive. The atrial fibrillation episodes I had been having since the morning of the fire kept happening for the first 3 months. I was home, at unpredictable times, mostly at night, and I would lie in bed with my hand on my chest and feel my heart doing the wrong thing and think about the metal bucket. My doctor put me on a low-dose beta blocker and told me the episodes would likely fade over the following year. And she was right. But the fading took time. Grief has its own calendar, and it does not consult you. I want to tell you what helped, because if any of you end up on this side of the situation, you may need to hear it. What helped was small and boring. Walking every morning for 1 hour, whether I felt like it or not. Cooking my own dinner instead of eating out, because the physical work of cutting an onion is a form of returning to your own hands. Calling Tyler on Sunday afternoons for 20 minutes, not to talk about Cebu, just to hear about his job and his kids. Signing up for a weekly poker night with 3 men from the YMCA, none of whom knew anything about the last 4 years of my life, and none of whom asked. Reading library books instead of the news. Not looking at Remy's social media, not once, not for any reason. Ever. That last one was the hardest. I want to name it in front of you because there is a version of me that spent the first 6 months back home checking her Facebook every day. And that version of me would still be in Cebu emotionally, even though his body was in Nevada. The rule I gave myself was simple. The marriage ended when the metal bucket lit. Anything that happens on her side of the world after that is not my information to know. My side of the world is here. Walk, cook, call your son, play poker, sleep. My name is Cal Whitmore Escarlin. I am 64 years old. I live in Reno, Nevada. On a Saturday morning in Cebu City, in a district called Labangan, my wife burned my shirts in a metal bucket while her brother watched. And by the time the fire was out, I had already made the phone call that would eventually freeze her access to the account she thought she was going to empty that same afternoon. I did not do that because I was clever. I did that because my son asked me the right questions. My attorney answered her phone, and my Dropbox held 4 years of receipts I had never expected to need. Do not be the man who has to find those 3 things on the morning of the fire. Be the man who has them in place the night before. Thank you for listening. If this story helped you, please subscribe, because there are more of these coming. And someone in your life may need to hear the next one before their own bucket is lit.